everybody, welcome back to Subspace, the Spacedock podcast. Today I'm joined by the fantastic Trekyards team with Samuel and Stuart. Say hello, guys.
Hey guys, I'm Captain Foley from Trekyards.
I'm Connor Cockins from Trekyards, and we're both coming to you live, sort of.
Yeah,
live.
you've rarely got them. You've got them in the same place on a special occasion. Not something that happens very often. But yeah, if you've not already checked out Trekyards, go right there right now. It's great. I'll put it in the description. Great channel. Investigate immediately.
As is yours, Daniel. Great.
Thank you.
We love Spacedock.
Absolutely.
Everyone should watch Spacedock. We're watching this, so you're watching Spacedock, but watch more Spacedock.
Thanks, guys. Today we'll be doing something very specific. Obviously, we're going to be doing a Star Trek podcast because we've got the experts on hand. But we're doing something kind of specific, something that I hope a few people might not be enormously familiar with, and that's pre-Federation Earth ships from Star Trek Enterprise. We've got one that everyone will be quite familiar with, and I think the other four, we're going through 5, the other 4 you might be a little interested to hear more about. So, to kick off, we're going to go with the Conestoga class colony ship, from which appeared in the episode Terra Nova, which I think, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this design. I quite like the sort of hybridization of early chemical engine kind of stuff with warp track technology. Like, it looks like a nice middle ground between those designs.
Yeah, I totally agree. We actually did a mission briefing on this not too long ago, and yet the big thruster engines on the back, which are the chemical propulsion, is very NASA-esque, which I like the tie-in for that.
What's really fascinating about this ship, it is a Warp 1 ship. So it is the first step above the Zephyr Cochrane's warp ship, which is why it has so many links to that by having the engines and yet having this full space frame. I sort of compared it to the Botany Bay in a sense, having a big cargo hold sort of ship.
Yeah, we know that from certain behind the scenes discussion things, they've said a lot of times that ships like the Conestoga and the Warp Delta and the earlier version of the Warp Delta with the chemical engines were designed to be sort of extrapolations of like the space shuttle and stuff, which we see the in the intro sequence for Enterprise, they show the prototype space plane docking with the International Space Station. And I think the effort that they made to make a sort of lineage that works really well to lead into the NX class is I think, excellently done in Enterprise.
Absolutely. And these are very purpose-built ships. This isn't just the Explorer or the Heavy Cruiser. This is a colony ship. And you said in an episode designed to be, what was it?
Disassembled upon arrival and used to build the colonies. So,
yeah.
One thing that really struck me, though, was the look of the warp nacelles, how they actually look more advanced than the NX-01s.
We have great discussion about this because there is sort of great detailing, and if you look them up close, and you will see it in our episode, not to keep saying that, but it's really interesting designed, and it's sort of not as much linked to the NX per se, but you liked it because of the curves and how much more extra bulk there was as opposed to the NX.
Yeah, for me, it tied in the TOS aesthetic of not having the lit grills on each side like the NX does.
Yeah.
And the inner grille is very reminiscent of the refit Enterprise of later times. So they look more advanced to me, even though they're smaller when you compare them to the NX.
Controversial opinion from Trekyards here. Oof.
Yeah, I think there were some concepts for some semi-canon visuals for the SS Valiant from, I think it was the second episode of TOS. We see the probe that it's dumped be brought into the transporter bay. And I think there were some people saying that they extrapolated ideas for the Conestoga from that kind of shape, and you can see that. Yeah, you can see correlations there.
Absolutely, and John Eves did a great job of designing the Conestoga. It's just a great looking ship.
Yeah, I think it's a terrible shame we didn't see more of it, to be honest.
Well, it really is, because the actual 3D model which we use for Trekyards, the real assets used on Enterprise, there is so much detail. I don't know if they thought they were going to use it more. Because if you look at the show, there is not even a flyby of it. It's only in stills.
Yeah.
And the amount of detail is incredible. Seriously.
Yeah, so much effort for such a small, fleeting appearance, really.
But they had so many ships built for the Enterprise era, and you'll watch our Discovery episode. We did the entire fleet, and there's a good, especially if you include both versions of the Warp Delta, the chemical thrusters, and then the impulse engine version. They should have shown that fleet flying around Earth every time they went to Spacedock. Yeah. Seeing these things just zooming around wouldn't have taken much, but added so much texture to the time, and they should have all still been around because they're not going to. There's so few vessels around. You'd think they'd still exist. But,
we see obviously non-canon, but we see in Star Trek Legacy that they've retrofitted these things with impulse engines, and they've got a nice squared off impulse assembly where the chemical engines used to be, and they're called Discovery class in that, which is perhaps we don't know yet if the Discovery is the first of its class, but that might end up being overridden quite soon.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's nice to see that carried on, and even the Delta is implied to be quite old by the time of Enterprise, and they're still using them all over the place. And you're right, it would have been very good, like especially when you've got the end of season 3. There's a battle happening in the Sol system with and it's just the Kumari and the Enterprise fighting the sphere near the and they're so close that they can see the Yosemite relay and all that. And you think there'd be at least a couple of Deltas flying around or something, so we could get some Starfleet ships involved.
So you're saying they have 20 Xindi and a Xindi weapon and the NX and Earth, and you want more flying things? This is like 2008. How much processing trying to pull into it? God, Daniel.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, closing thoughts. Good design. Really different, and it could easily not be Trek, but at the same time, the amount of deflector dishes and or at least sensor dishes and things, it really is a nice little design.
I mean, how long do you reckon a ship like this would remain in service, really? Because we've got Discovery coming up, which is like 80 years into the Federation. And all this.
We know according to the ships of the line calendars and stuff that they're still using DY-100s as cargo ships and alongside Connie's. So a smaller ship, who knows? I mean, it's a possibility that could be used for quite a while.
I'm not sure that's exactly canon, but
I know, but
my guess would be though that every single space frame is important in the NX era. I mean, it took you 2 years, minimum to build an NX, and that's the best ship at the time.
Yeah.
And that's with just built one. So, and that's every bit. I mean, they're not like randomly building it. All the resources of the planet going towards the newest ship. So I could see it taking quite a few years to build potentially, or at least develop. And I would see them maybe lasting 50, 60, 70, 80 years. If there's still a couple knocking around, why not use them?
Yeah.
I mean, Warp 1 is not fast, but they're to the moon, they're to Mars. I mean, it could be the equivalent of, Coach on planes.
yeah.
You fly
And
Coach.
it's clearly very modular in design, like adaptable. I mean, I know, again, non-canon, but if they can strip the engines off it and just stick impulse engines on, then obviously the frame... I mean, even all the way across Star Trek, there's always adaptability for things that have been around a long time. We see Excelsior classes with totally TNG period bridges and stuff like stuck in there. And they seem to be quite capable of adapting things for the time.
That brings up an interesting point. If they remove those chemical engines, which take up a large section of that rear end, and actually install impulse engines, which we assume has less bulk, you would increase the cargo capacity or interior volume of the ship quite substantially by taking all that chemical booster stuff out.
And not just that, the fuel.
Carry fuel, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably a huge portion of the ship's bulk is quite likely devoted to. I mean, assuming they are still using the same kind of liquid fuel for chemical engines that we presume.
You've got to imagine that just pushing 20 years ahead. Look at our spacefaring technology. iPhone to Apollo 13. Okay, it's 40 years, but or whatever. So just they strip out the internals, put them back in. Oh look, all the entire computer system takes up one room as opposed to three. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to be so much more efficient. I can see it's being Coach. Just Coach to Mars. Easy.
I mean, we see Picard talking to Wesley and TNG about old intra-system trips in this period, 22nd century interplanetary journeys. And like you said about the D100, again, not quite canon, but still, there's obviously cause for slower ships much later. So we could totally see these kicking about, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's safe to say that the warp engines got refitted and probably could hit warp 2 or something like that too.
Yeah. I mean, Eagle Moss implies that the Delta got fast. I mean, I know it's Eagle Moss, it's after the fact and all that, but they imply that the Delta was certainly improved in warp speed with refits later on. So, I mean, it seems logical that they would do the same kind of thing for most of their frames around that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, let's move on to a kind of strange one for the second one. The Sarajevo type, or the Elite Observer, as the set drawings call it. And we only saw this once, being used to pick somebody up in Enterprise for about 10 seconds. Although I suppose it was also there welcoming the Enterprise back at the end of Season 3, when among that larger fleet. And it is, I mean, I'm curious to hear your opinions on it, but it is a drastic change from the sort of Earth archetype first designs.
It almost doesn't look Federation. It almost looks like it belongs out of Babylon 5 or like a Naboo ship from Star Wars.
Yeah, I see what you mean with Naboo. Yeah,
it looks like a totally different aesthetic than the Federation, but
and it's
you say that, but at the same token, we know the warp delta has a triangle shape. We know the Discovery has that
but
shape is common.
It's that texturing on the hull, which
Sure,
makes...
but my when I see it, and we see it as, like you say, a taxi basically.
Yeah.
You know, this could easily be private corporation, hireable transport / lower end, warp 1.5, warp 2 vessel that is just a hull to get you from A to B. You've got those bridge modules potentially, some cargo. It could just be like a private jet, and that's it. When you look at that sort of design, the space room is so easy to make, so cheap to make, so simple shapes.
But the one thing that sticks out to me is the lack of visible warp nacelles.
Yeah,
which
I
is
was thinking exactly the same. Yeah.
very standard on Federation designs, right?
Interesting.
Especially for early Federation designs. I mean, later I could see it like with the Defiant, the warp engines are much more integrated.
That's interesting.
And this almost seems like it's an advancement over everything else.
Yeah, the idea of warp nacelles being laid into the hull like that seems to say that it's advanced. Like, it makes sense, like 100 years later or whatever, when like and the Defiant in itself was an experimental high-end design, and that kind of like...
It links into what I just said, though. What if this is... I mean, it looks, based on the hull plating, it looks potentially newish. Like, it's not super grungy. So what if this is, like, built maybe 5 years before the NX? It was built to have the most advanced version of Warp 2 engine. So they're much smaller, much more refined. You've got, like, because we saw, the Conestoga just a few minutes ago, that's, like, the pinnacle of Warp 1. Or maybe this is the newest Warp 2, therefore you can shrink it, have it much more at the back, cheaper, need all the whole warp nacelle configuration. You just need a bit, and they've refined it, potentially. I mean, as things shrink, as they get more advanced.
And like you said about corporations, it is entirely possible that this is just not a Starfleet ship, and is totally disconnected from that whole ethic of... I mean, we don't see a lot of civilian designs, and this could be a front runner for that kind of thing. It certainly does with the sort of sweeping windows on the two habitats at the back. It kind of speaks to cruise liners and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would doubt this is a Starfleet ship. Probably some sort of civilian... I mean, Terra Nova is operated not by Starfleet, that entire facility. So they need spaceships. They need warp capable potentially.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could very much see this being I mean, look at SpaceX now. It's the other version of NASA.
But I still don't buy with the early days of the Federation. I still don't buy that it doesn't have any warp nacelles. I think the addition of those would have been very much welcomed in this design.
Okay, now you say that, but part of warp nacelles is the need for facades. That's what you take. That's how you input the new fuel.
That's for deep space exploration when you're not near a system.
Exactly.
So that makes kind of sense.
So look how many warp cores this needs. It probably only needs one set each. It's only going warp 2, and it's a small ship. You don't need facades. You're only doing limited trips. You take the fuel with you.
Yeah.
So therefore, you always half the need for half of the warp drive. I mean, I think we definitely in our Trekyards episode need to see the back of the ship, see what the engines look like.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd love to see them.
Yeah, cause, I mean, I've got some kind of a top-down image here. They seem to be just sort of like drawn across. Like there's no kind of outcropping at the back, which is kind of interesting. But it is very one piece in its sort of like teardrop design for the whole ship. Like it's not.
It is cool though.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
It is cool, but honestly, in a lineup, I would not pick this as a Federation ship.
It's more Vulcan / it's more Vulcan.
Yeah, I could see it as Vulcan, yeah, or Bajoran even. It's kind of swept.
That's interesting, yeah.
Especially with that sort of gradient brown kind of angles on the surface, like we see some of the Bajoran Impulse ships in early season 7 DS9. Seems to echo that. Of course, the Bajor system hasn't even been discovered yet, so no actual connection there.
And thank goodness for that, because we don't like Bajorans here. At least I don't.
And we've already got too much of Enterprise bumping into races that they're not supposed to have met for another 200
like
years.
Ferengi
and
the Borg, yeah.
I like the Ferengi episode personally.
I guess Archer just never wrote any of that stuff down. Just whatever. Filed somewhere. I suppose they did deliberately. It's kind of off topic, but both with the Borg one and the Ferengi one, they never identify themselves as who they are. And it's entirely plausible that the Federation just has some folder somewhere in a basement that says unknown species 667J or something.
Think about how many alien races they met. If everyone's a new one, you don't know the importance of any specific race, and multiple times they get attacked, multiple times they get boarded. It's just one of the 70, so, why would it be special?
Yeah.
We know it's special, but it's not. But yeah, interesting ship.
Okay, so we'll move on to what is probably my favourite Enterprise era design, the Warp Delta, which I think is just a. I mean, it's built from the ground up to be just another background ship, but I think they've done like such a brilliant job of making this work.
You mean the Discovery prequel ship?
Yeah.
Photo Discovery.
The Discovery is a Warp Delta plugged into the saucer bevel at the back of the Franklin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, why'd you like it so
ships.
much then? Why'd you like it so much then, Daniel? Talk us through it.
I like the. I mean, we didn't see. I suppose everything in this era is not enormously big for.
Very small.
For Earth, which makes sense. But this, it's like, I don't want to call it an escort because they haven't gone out of their way to build combat ships yet. But we see in if you read through the Eagle Moss descriptions, it's intended, at least according to those, as a sort of escort for freighters and for colonies. And as we were discussing the other day, it's support for early days when we only care about our close colonies.
Yeah.
And we're no concern for exploration yet. And again,
it does look cheap to make.
Yeah, it looks like you could churn out loads of these things, and they just make decent patrol kind of survey style ships. And it's such a great shape. It really. I mean, one of my favourite shots in all of Enterprise is from the intro to In a Mirror Darkly, when they've got two of these things flying on the wing of the Enterprise, and it just looks so good. It just screams Mirror Universe. And these ships look brilliant with the markings, with the Mirror Universe markings, and it's such a great aesthetic.
Yeah, this design, I really like this one. It looks fast standing still, which is one of the things I like about certain designs, like the E, for example. It looks like it's almost stretched, almost going into warp. So I think that's a great look, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you say that, the nacelles, the perfect example. Just look at the Bassards. They are...
Yes, I prefer them to the Enterprise nacelles, to be honest.
I mean, that's the only one with this style. It shows the evolutionary step, that they change as it goes into the NX. It gets more rounded. But it's a really interesting design. Obviously, you mentioned before, there is the first version of this we see is in the tile sequence, orbiting that moon. You get a very fleeting shot of it, and also the ship Archer uses as the remote control, based on the same vague concept. When they needed a ship for Enterprise Season 3 as part of the fleet, they said refit it and make it look more modern.
I got to correct you there. It's not in the opening of Enterprise. That ship is very different. It's got like three.
No, that's what I'm saying.
It's got big engines. Okay.
I know. That's what I'm saying. This is the refit. I was just finishing. I was just saying that. I was just saying that.
Sorry.
In Season 3, they said, "Hey, we need a Federation ship. We've got one, but it's not higher detail. It's a really bad model actually for the time. We need to high detail it and make it more modern. Hence this ship, Stuart, Warp Delta, which we need to do evolutionary episode on. It's a great reinvention. I mean, add the NX plating. It looks really good. The fact that it's so soft at edges and the bridge is so close. It's to the front. It changes the feel. Very different to what you think of.
One thing I do have to say though is it's very reminiscent of a TOS Romulan ship,
right?
Like the Warbird or Bird of Prey we see in Balance of Terror. I think this as a Romulan ship in Enterprise would have made more sense than the more advanced looking ones they did use. Because I really, it says Romulan to me, this shape.
I'd certainly like to see it skinned in Romulan colours and stuff. Like it is that kind of shape. And you're right about the Bird of Prey. That was our place. Like that looked like it should be in an episode of TNG or something. That
exactly. Yeah.
With the proper glowing green nacelles and stuff. No coverage over the glowing parts as we normally have earlier on.
Yeah,
but you know,
I would love to have seen these fleshed out, as I mentioned earlier. You know, see the Enterprise era fleet together a bit more. You know, see what a bridge would look like, and not a less advanced bridge. See where we can draw the lines of evolution, maybe into TOS as well, maybe, and just. It is a cool design. I mean, like I said, it feels fast. Just that sweeping curves. I mean, it in motion just looks nice. Can't wait to do animations with it. It'd be really interesting.
How much smaller is it than the NX? Do we know?
A bit smaller. Yeah, the NX, the other ship. I mean, that's a good comparison shot there. The one from Intermirror. Yeah, it's about 2/3, maybe.
Okay. Maybe slightly smaller than 2/3. Yeah.
Yeah, we can bring up our episode and you can see.
We can bring up our episode.
Yeah, you can.
But yeah, I mean, this is obviously already a veteran ship by the time of Enterprise. And again, do you suppose we might see the same kind of design cropping up later in the early 23rd century, perhaps?
Well, I'd love to. I mean, like I say, we sort of do see it roughly. What's great, I think this must have been the pride of the fleet at the time, because if you think about it, based on the original version from Tile Sequence in this version, this is so much the Connie, the refit of the time, because the classic version is low detail. Then you got the refit treatment. Now it's all silvery and detaily. So it's the refit that it's the pride of the fleet. Obviously gets improved.
And then its refit sets the mark for everything else, much like the Constitution refit set what everything in the TMP era would look like.
Great point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first have impulse engines. I mean, this could be the first ship to have impulse engines.
That's entirely possible.
Maybe.
That's an interesting idea.
Oh, those look like advanced impulse engines too on this even.
I doubt I have 3 refits though. I do get like downside. I do think this is the oldest ship of the fleet.
It's interesting though, if that crystal in the back is a warp sustainer crystal like it is in the NX-01, it looks more like an impulse crystal from the refit design. It doesn't really have the same kind of tie-in look for warp sustainer, but where it's located, I would assume it's just a warp sustainer.
I really like how that's placed on this ship. Like,
yes.
I think that looks really great. The way it's kind of protruding from the plating between the impulse drive. That's a really good look, I think.
Yeah, they could have just made it flat at the back, but that detailing really brings it to life.
Yeah, and so we've never, this was never actually given an in-canon name. In Warp Delta is what was attributed to the design drawings and all that. But we never got a name in the show.
In the scene files of Enterprise, they call it a Warp Delta. So that's the colloquial name for it, as it were.
A few names have been thrown around as semi-canon sources. We know in one episode of Enterprise, Trip refers to the Neptune class, and he says that the captain's chair on the NX is from the Neptune class, and complains that they haven't bothered to reinvent everything from the ground up. And it's another one of those. It's much like the Valdor in that it's gone through a dozen names. It's been called Ganges class and Delta class and Jupiter class. And
strange.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have seen it more, to be honest, fleshed out, talked about, included more. And I don't know if Discovery has any intention of reusing styles from Enterprise, but if they did, I'd certainly like to see some of these cropping around in the background, floating around star bases and stuff.
That would be awesome. The addition of it in the opening for the Mirror Universe episode was a great addition, for sure.
Yeah.
I put so much work into that. I think what would be great for Discovery would be a single flashback, one of the early episodes of a character that's maybe like 80, see them in their heyday of Enterprise, and then just reuse all these ships and do a single flashback. We see a fleet of them or something. Just give a nice little callback. So see them proper and obviously better lit and 1080p. I think that'd be a great addition, because they should all be given a little bit more life. Because I mean, all the hours of work, or minutes, as some designs have, these ship designs, then definitely days of modelling it. And I mean, if I ask you both, if you were a designer and a modeler, then spent the week building the ship, it's only in 14 shots over 4 years, how would you feel?
Yeah, not great. I mean, look at the Conestoga. It's not even like how much effort went into that, and it's just on a monitor in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
For like 11 frames or whatever. It's just so much effort and so much detail that you just can't see. But yeah, so I mean, we've never had since TOS, every Star Trek show has had some kind of send off from a character from another Star Trek show.
Yeah.
In the first episode, and I guess unless they wanted to use T'Pol or Phlox, they would have to use some kind of flashback, really.
Yeah.
For Discovery, because
or Saval or somebody, right?
Saval's a good one. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Can they? I don't know if they can use Saval, but
anyway. Of course they can.
Yeah, I like the fact that he is or might be in Axanar. That was a good choice.
Well, they own the character, so they do whatever they want.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.